My husband's mom, Mill, compared my pregnancy to my sister-in-law's, saying hers was perfect and mine wasn't. After my sister-in-law gave birth, both she and my husband stopped talking to Mill. My husband and I have been married for more than 2 years, and we've been together for 7. He's amazing, the man of my dreams, and we have a great life together. My big Mexican family loves him, and I haven't heard anyone say they don't like him. He's respectful to everyone, which is why I fell in love with him. We rarely argue, except when it comes to his mom, Mill. Mill is difficult to deal with. My husband's family is smaller than mine. Besides his parents, he has a sister who got married last year. His parents are conservative Christians from a small town, and his mom is overly protective and controlling. She insists on spending holidays together as a family and causes a scene if we don't agree. When I first met his family, his dad and I got along fine. His sister treats me like her own sister, but his mom is a different story. She says sexist things to me, like when I told him I'm a marine biologist specializing in conservation efforts for marine life. His dad thought it was awesome, but Mill didn't say anything and just frowned. Later, my husband's dad called him to say that Mill wanted him to end our relationship because she thinks I'm not good enough for her son. She believes I don't act like a woman should because I have a job. I really enjoy being a scientist, and my husband has never told me to be a housewife or choose a stereotypically feminine job. If he had, we probably wouldn't be together. But apparently, that's what his mother, Mill, thought he needed. She complained that with my well-paying job, I might not become a housewife after marriage, and he should have found a better woman. My husband firmly told his dad, Phil, to let his mother know that who he chooses to marry is none of her business. I was relieved he stood up for me. This was a positive sign for me, and it's why I didn't end our relationship right then and there after hearing what his mother thought about me. Unfortunately, as we got more serious, Mill became worse towards me. Despite my husband trying to protect me, she made snide comments when we were alone, insisting that a good wife should be a homemaker. She also repeatedly told me I didn't look like the kind of woman my husband should have brought home because I'm not feminine enough to carry children. At first, I thought she might be joking, but when she kept saying it, I realized she was serious. One day during dinner at her insistence, she went on a rant about missing a time when women took care of their families, and men went out to earn. My husband responded, saying the world doesn't work like that anymore, and he's lucky to have a partner like me. We both earn well and take care of the house together. Mill shook her head, insisting that women should act like women and men should act like men. I knew she was intentionally talking about me, but I tried to stay calm. Phil told her to calm down and that it wasn't the right time for that kind of discussion. However, she got upset, seeing he wasn't supporting her. She continued saying she was just speaking the truth and wanted the best for her son. Then she looked pointedly at me. I had enough, so I quietly got up from the table and asked my husband to drive me home, which he readily agreed to. He looked at his mother with disappointment and we left. Later, when Phil called to mend things, I firmly told him it wasn't up to Mill to decide who her son marries, and she should stop taunting me about having a job. Phil agreed and tried to apologize on her behalf, but I wasn't having it. My husband supported me and told his dad that if she didn't apologize, he wouldn't go back to see her. Perhaps this threat scared her into apologizing to me, and she promised never to bring it up again. So I managed to let that situation roll off my shoulders. Unfortunately, some issues don't go away easily. Just a few months later, when my husband and I first started living together before getting married, and I had to go on a research expedition for a few weeks, she found out. She called me to ask who would take care of the house and her son. I was confused, put her on speaker so my husband driving next to me could hear, and asked her what she meant by that. She started to say how now that I was living with her son, I needed to stop being so immature. She kept saying I shouldn't go on these expeditions and should commit more to being a good partner to her son. My husband angrily told her he didn't need anyone to take care of him, and we were equal partners sharing responsibilities. She got upset, saying we couldn't get married because I didn't know how to be a proper wife. My husband asked her to mind her own business and cut her call. When he proposed, my Mill wasn't happy. She was even more upset when she learned we wanted a small wedding due to the expense and our plans to move into our own place. I decided to invite only close family members, with plans for a celebration with others later. But Mill argued with my husband, wanting to invite all her friends. When he asked if she would pay for their plates, she got offended, saying we both earned well and should be ashamed to ask. We stuck to our decision for a small wedding, making it clear she'd be responsible for any uninvited guests she invited. During the wedding, she loudly complained about everything and made it clear she hated my wedding gown. I ignored her because I didn't want to be hurt by her mean comments. My sister tried her best to keep Mill away from me for the rest of the evening. Last year, in mid-April, we found out I was pregnant, which was great news since we had been trying for some time. We waited until I was around 9 weeks pregnant to tell our close family and friends. My Mill was upset she wasn't the first to know. She called me, saying she had every right to know first, and she was disappointed in me. I told her we wanted to wait before sharing such important news, and if she wanted to complain, she could. She could feel free to call my husband, as I was in no mood to listen to her lectures about what a good woman should do. Just a month after I announced my pregnancy, Syl told us she was pregnant too. We were shocked yet pleased, knowing there would be a new addition to our family. Syl wasn't married but had a serious longtime boyfriend whom we had all met. I knew Mill would make a big deal about Syl's pregnancy before marriage, which she did. My husband supported his sister, and eventually, Mill accepted it. Phil was emotional and happy to have 2 grandchildren. Syl and I started spending more time together since we were simultaneously pregnant. We leaned on each other for advice and companionship during this magical yet challenging period. While shopping for our babies and deciding on nurseries, Mill started constantly comparing our pregnancies. She turned it into a competition, saying Syl was better equipped to be a mother since she had always been a homemaker, unlike me with a job. Syl and I were bothered by her remarks. During my gender reveal party, I asked Syl to find out the baby's gender from our doctor to prepare the envelope. She did the same for her party. Mill became furious, having a meltdown, accusing me of taking away her grandchild by not allowing her to organize the gender reveal. She insisted my husband should put his foot down so she could be more involved. My husband didn't like how she was speaking to me, so he told her to leave or be permanently cut off from our grandchild's life. She made a scene, crying and insisting she wanted the best for her grandchild, but eventually left. Later, Phil and Syl called concerned about her behavior. We had to explain everything. Syl was shocked and urged me to rest, given the stressful situation. I was distressed after my Mill's screaming episode during Christmas. My husband told her we wouldn't be coming because I couldn't travel long distances due to my condition. She got upset, accusing him of straying away from the family, and hung up when he refused to change his decision. We hoped she understood, but a week later, she texted asking us to be at her place at 4:00 p.m. My husband reminded her about our earlier conversation, but she called screaming again, claiming he had no right to avoid family and accusing me of deterring him. My husband stood his ground, and she started yelling about him needing to control me. I began realizing how controlling and toxic Mill was becoming. I shared my concerns with my husband and Syl, and they agreed she was crossing the line. However, dealing with their mother was exhausting. When it was time to give birth, we didn't have time to inform anyone as I went into preterm labor at 33 weeks. Our baby boy was born at 34 weeks via an emergency C-section. After confirming our well-being, my husband announced our son's birth in the family group chat and informed my family. Everyone congratulated me, but Mill had another meltdown for not being told about the labor and birth. She texted us, insisting she should have been in the delivery room, watching her grandchild come into the world. I didn't reply, focused on my baby. When we announced his name, she called my husband, crying that it sounded too Mexican. She suggested a different name, but we didn't listen. When it was time for her to meet our son, she insisted on calling him a completely different name. My husband firmly asked her to stop, but she tried justifying it as her special little name for him. She also hates that I breastfeed my son because it takes him away from her. She suggests I start feeding him formula so she can spend more time with him. My mother explained the importance of breast milk for a newborn, but Mill argued it was unfair. Her taunts and controlling nature became unbearable. The final straw came when she invited me to lunch to discuss something important. Despite trying to cancel, she insisted we meet. At lunch, she asked about our son's godfather. I knew she wouldn't like the answer. I explained that my husband and I had chosen each other as our children's godparents. Mill burst into tears in the restaurant, yelling about how I could do this to her. She insisted she should be my son's godmother as his grandparent. I reminded her of her belief that Sil was better equipped, so she should be happy that my son would be taken care of well. She argued only she could be trusted and demanded to be his godparent. Fed up, I firmly told her we were done discussing it, and she could talk to my husband later. I told Sil about the lunch, and she didn't like that Mill wanted to be our son's godparent. My husband, too, couldn't understand Mill's behavior and ignored her calls. Last week, Sil gave birth to her daughter, and she asked me to be in the delivery room for support. I happily obliged, with my husband and mother caring for our son at home. After Sil gave birth, I made sure her boyfriend took over the duties. He revealed that apparently Sil, tired of Mill's toxic behavior, took a stand and decided to implement a no-contact rule between Mill and her daughter. Sil asked the hospital to refuse Mill entry, allowing only Phil inside to meet the baby. This decision was shocking and unexpected, as I had never imagined Sil would stand up to Mill in this way. It made me realize why Mill had been calling me all day, possibly trying to blame me or convince me to persuade Sil to see her granddaughter. When I talked to Sil later, I found out that this decision came after witnessing the extent of Mill's actions towards me over the years. Going no contact was a necessary boundary to protect her daughter from Mill's toxic influence. It was a moment of reckoning for Mill, as the consequences of her actions finally came crashing down. The fallout has been severe, and Mill is completely cut off from her daughter's life, unable to witness precious moments with her grandchild. Since then, I have started to think if it would be the right decision for us to cut off Mill permanently as well. Would it be too cruel? Update 1. Hello everyone. First off, I want to thank you all for your kind words and advice. It means a lot to me. My husband and I have not had any contact with Mill since we found out that Sil has cut her off. She continues to call us, but we ignore them. After discussing with my husband, we agreed that for our mental peace, it would be better to cut her out permanently, as there is no guarantee she won't behave the same way with our son. Everyone asking why we waited so long. My husband grew up in this toxic environment and didn't fully realize how wrong it was until his mother started misbehaving with me. He has always supported and protected me, but his mother is just too much to handle. We set up a group video call with his sister and Phil, where we discussed our decision, and they are on our side. Now we just need to inform Mill about our decision. Update 2. If you're itching for an update, sit down. It's a bit long. My husband decided to call his mother and tell her about our decision yesterday evening. When she first picked up the call, she started screaming at him about how long it had been since he talked with her, and that she wanted to meet our son immediately. My husband remained quiet, and until she was done with her demands, and then gently let her know how she was right, and that he needed to step up and be more of a man. Mill immediately agreed, saying this is what she had wanted from him all along. But my husband interrupted her, stating as a man of our family, he had decided to cut her off from us permanently to protect us from her toxic ideology and drama. Mill was dumbfounded at first, perhaps trying to process what he had just spoken. When she understood the severity of our decision, she started saying she was coming over to meet us and that nothing could stop her from meeting her grandson. My husband immediately warned her that we wouldn't let her in, and we would call the police on her for trespassing on our property. She then started screaming, claiming it was probably my decision and that I was tearing the family apart. My husband told her to think whatever she wanted, but he was done with her. She continued to scream, saying this is why he should have never married a woman like me and that she knew I was bad news all along. Naturally, my husband got angry. He reminded her that we were not the only ones cutting off contact, and Sil has done the same thing, so the issue is clearly her, and she needs to start accepting that. Mill, as usual, kept arguing back, claiming I had polluted the minds of everyone and successfully taken her children away from her. Exasperated, My husband told her if she wanted to blame someone, she should blame herself for being bitter and racist. He said everyone was just done with her, and she needed to come to terms with her own actions. This shut my mill up, and he blocked her after their conversation. I have done the same. I've also informed my family about the situation and not to pick up Mill's calls for now. I feel bad for my husband and Sil for not having a supportive mother, but I'm also glad that I won't ever have to go through such shitty situations ever again. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I'm happy to share that our son is doing well. S and I continue to remain close, meeting regularly for playdates with our babies. It's adorable to see how they are bonding, and I hope they continue to be each other's best friends as they grow up. Another happy update is that Sil is finally getting married to her baby daddy, as we all knew she would. Now, on to the main update. We continue to have no contact with Mill. For those concerned about our safety, don't worry, we have cameras installed everywhere, and we changed our locks. There's no way Mill can disturb us. I doubt she will ever confront us publicly, since many people know exactly why we cut her off, and she must be embarrassed. After we cut off all contact, she did try to persuade Phil to talk with us, but he refused and let her know he was getting sick of her too. I guess when her own husband told her this, it might have finally made her think. A few weeks later, she asked Phil to tell us how sorry she was for everything she had done to me. I doubt she genuinely feels apologetic, which is why we continue to not talk with her. Until today, Phil and my family continue to visit us and bond with our grandchild, which is how it's going to be in the near future.